Welcome to our deep dive into tribal leadership. Today we're going to be talking about The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. It summarizes this book called Tribal Leadership, and it's about how companies aren't just one big team, but actually um, collections of smaller groups.
Tribes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
and it's about how to lead them and work within those groups.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating concept, isn't it? Because most leaders, when they look at an organization, they tend to just uh, treat it as one unit.
Right.
But if you actually step back and think about it, you've got so many different mini cultures operating at different levels of effectiveness.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu breaks down these tribal stages into 5 distinct categories. And the names are fantastic. So we've got meltdown, we've got apathy, we've got lone warriors, we've got tribal pride, and innocent wonderment.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked in a meltdown environment? I feel like
Oh, yeah.
that sense of despair and hostility is palpable.
Absolutely. I mean, and what's interesting is that this book, Tribal Leadership, summarized in The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, it doesn't just describe these stages, but it also offers insights into how to move a tribe to a higher level. So it's not just like, okay, you're in this bad stage. It's actually about how do you progress? How do you get to that next level of leadership?
So it's not a one-size-fits-all leadership approach. So tell me more about these stages and how they play out in the real world, like apathy, stage 2 apathy. That feeling of, like, what's the point? I feel like I've definitely
Yeah.
been there. Why is that victim mentality so difficult to break?
You know, it's interesting because it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When a tribe believes they're powerless, they almost give up and they stop taking responsibility. So they will constantly point to external factors rather than looking inwards and saying, okay, what could we be doing differently?
Right?
What role do we play in this?
Oh, that's so insightful because it makes you think about how the language and the mindset can actually perpetuate these
Yeah.
negative cycles. Now, stage 3 lone warriors. This one sounds kind of exciting to me. It's like everyone's a gunslinger
Yeah, it
in
does.
the Wild West. What are the potential pitfalls of this stage?
Well, you know, the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu does a good job of highlighting that whilst it looks like it could be quite productive because you've got all these really talented people, the problem is there's no collaboration. And so you miss out on all of the innovation and synergy that comes from working together.
Right.
So you might have a bunch of brilliant individuals, but because they are not working together, they might not be as successful as they could be.
So it's like that classic trade-off between individual brilliance and collective wisdom. I wonder if some companies get stuck in this stage because they reward individual performance over teamwork.
Yeah, and that's a really great point, and it's something that tribal leadership talks about. You know, the book argues that to evolve beyond that lone warrior stage, leaders need to cultivate a sense of shared purpose
Okay.
and encourage collaboration.
So it's about shifting the focus from me to we, which brings us to stage 4, trouble pride. Now, this is where things start to sound good. What makes this stage so special?
This is where the magic happens. As the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu says, it's the stage where people feel a genuine sense of belonging, they're proud to be a part of the team, and they're willing to go the extra mile
Yeah.
because they actually care about the collective.
It's like that feeling of being a part of something bigger than yourself,
Yeah.
right? Where you feel like your success is intertwined with the success of the tribe.
Exactly. And that sense of shared purpose and belonging fuels a whole new level of motivation and commitment.
Yeah, okay, so I'm definitely starting to see the appeal of trouble pride. But before we get too carried away, let's talk about stage 5, innocent wonderment. This sounds almost utopian. Is it even possible for a tribe to reach this level?
It's rare, but it is possible. And the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu actually describes stage 5 tribes as being incredibly adaptable, innovative, and they are driven by this desire to make a positive impact on the world.
So it's not just about achieving business goals. It's actually about having a larger sense of purpose and making a difference.
Precisely. It's about operating from a place of abundance, creativity, and a deep understanding of interconnectedness.
Wow. It's amazing to think that a group can reach that level of synergy and innovation. Okay, but let's bring it back down to earth for a sec. For our listeners who are thinking, okay, this all sounds really great, but how do I actually apply this to my work? What would you say?
Well, the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu actually offers some really practical tips. One of the key takeaways is the power of language. You know, the words we use can either elevate or sabotage a tribe's culture.
So it's not just about what we say, but how we say it.
Exactly. So, for example, if you're leading a stage 1 meltdown tribe, using language that inspires hope and possibility can actually start to shift the energy.
Yeah.
So instead of dwelling on the problems, you focus on solutions.
Yeah.
Instead of blaming, you encourage accountability.
Right. It's about changing the narrative
Exactly.
and moving away from that negativity bias and focusing on what's possible.
Yeah, and the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu also emphasizes that even if you're not the formal leader,
Okay.
you can still influence the triumphs of language by just being more mindful of your own words and the way you frame things.
Hmm.
You can create a more positive and productive environment.
That's so empowering because it makes you realize that you don't have to be the CEO to make a difference.
Absolutely. And another practical tool from the guide is the concept of triads.
Okay.
So these are small groups of 3 people that can really drive change within a tribe.
Now, this is what I need some more guidance. How do you form effective triads? Is it just about finding people that you get along with?
It's more about creating like a strategic alliance.
Okay.
So ideally, you want people with complementary skills and perspectives who are united by a common goal. So it's kind of like a mini think tank within the larger tribe.
Ah, okay. So it's about leveraging those diverse perspectives to come up with more creative solutions. What is the role of the leader in facilitating these triads?
So the leader's role is to implement the triads, give them autonomy, and trust them to do their best work. So it's about creating a culture where people feel safe to take risks, experiment, and challenge the status quo.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all ties together. So you create a foundation of trust and collaboration. You empower people to think strategically, and then you give them the space to innovate and drive change.
Exactly. That's what tribal leadership is all about. It's creating a culture where people thrive, both individually and collectively.
Now, speaking of strategic thinking, the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu also mentions a couple of other books that offer even more insights into this concept. One that caught my eye was Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. It seems to really resonate with this whole idea of putting the tribe's needs first.
Yeah, Leaders Eat Last is a fantastic book, and it really talks about how great leaders create that sense of safety and belonging. For their team, they're willing to sacrifice their own comfort and security to ensure the well-being of the tribe.
And that really resonates with tribal leadership, where the leader is more of a facilitator than a dictator, right? Someone who empowers the tribe to achieve its full potential.
Exactly.
The other book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us by Daniel Pink, dives into the psychology of motivation.
Yeah.
I love that book. His idea that true motivation comes from autonomy, mastery, and purpose is so relevant to this conversation.
It is. Autonomy speaks to the power of empowering individuals and triads. Mastery relates to that. Stage 3, drive for excellence. And purpose is the essence of that tribal pride, that feeling of being connected to something bigger than yourself.
So all of these ideas are interconnected. It's about creating a work environment where people feel valued, empowered, and inspired to contribute their best work. Yeah, it's fascinating to see how all of these ideas connect and create this powerful framework for understanding leadership and teamwork. And the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu does such a brilliant job of really distilling these concepts into these actionable insights.
It really is a valuable resource. It takes the sometimes complex ideas from tribal leadership and it makes them accessible to anyone that wants to improve their leadership skills, regardless of their position or experience.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about this whole concept of tribal leadership. It's not just for CEOs or managers. It's for anyone who wants to make a positive impact within their team or their organization.
Absolutely. We all have the potential to be leaders, even if we're not, the ones with the fancy titles.
Right, so it's about taking ownership of our role within the tribe, understanding the dynamics at play, and using our influence to create a more positive and productive environment.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're not just passive bystanders, but we are active participants in shaping our work culture.
And that brings us back to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, which gives us a practical roadmap for doing just that. It gives us the tools and the insights to navigate these different tribal stages, to use language effectively, and to leverage the power of triads.
It's like having a cheat sheet for tribal leadership success. And it really does remind us that even small changes can make a big impact over time.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I would challenge everyone to consider this question: what one word best describes the current state of your work tribe?
Hmm,
Is it disconnected? Is it competitive, apathetic? Or is it something more positive, like collaborative or innovative?
that's such a powerful question because it encourages introspection and forces us to confront the reality of our current situation.
Exactly. And once you have that word, ask yourself, what can I do, even in a small way, to shift that word to something more positive? What actions can I take to contribute to a more thriving tribal culture?
Yeah, that's a great call to action. It reminds us that we all have agency and that we can all make a difference.
Exactly. And sometimes it's those small, consistent efforts that create the biggest shifts over time.
Well, deep divers, we've reached the end of our exploration into tribal leadership. Thank you for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And if you want to learn more about tribal leadership and the insights from the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Lathu, be sure to visit his website. It's packed with valuable resources for anyone that wants to level up their leadership skills and create a more thriving work tribe. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep leading with heart.
Thank you for joining us today. Visit the 1 Hour Guide website for more business insights by Anil Lathu.